Kyle Busch amazing huge NASCAR announcement must see. Everyone knows that Joe Gibbs Racing is one of the best NASCAR racing teams because it has won 2 championships. However, for the upcoming season, the team will no longer have Kyle Busch, who is widely considered to be its greatest driver. Well, do you want to listen to what Kyle has to say about it? Here at Racing Rush, we'll look into today's video to know the whole story. We are all aware that Kyle Busch will no longer compete for Joe Gibbs Racing and will instead compete for Richard Childress Racing beginning in the 2023 racing season. Busch, the only active driver to win multiple titles, and Gibbs, for whom he has driven since 2008 and won 2 Cup titles while also developing Toyota's most successful truck program, were unable to reach an agreement on a new deal. After being forced out of his previous team, Joe Gibbs Racing, by Mars's decision to withdraw from NASCAR, Kyle Busch has decided to drive for Richard Childress Racing and the number 8 car, beginning with the 2023 NASCAR season and continuing beyond that point. Joe Gibbs discussed the departure of Busch from the organization after the two had worked together for more than a decade. The departure of Kyle Busch from Joe Gibbs Racing is discussed by Joe Gibbs. For many years, Joe Gibbs Racing has been one of the most dominant teams in NASCAR, and Kyle Busch has been the driving force behind the team's rise to the top. Over the course of his career, the 37-year-old race car driver has won more than 200 races, the majority of which have been with the Toyota team. Gibbs went into a lengthy explanation when he was questioned about losing Busch on SiriusXM NASCAR radio. He began by mentioning the accomplishments that the two of them had accomplished together during the time they spent working together. That is such a significant development for us. We were partners for 15 years, during which time we won 56 races or something. Unbelievable. The success that Kyle Busch has had with the organization, according to Joe Gibbs. This is an astounding accomplishment since Busch is the NASCAR driver with the most wins across all the sport's top divisions. He became a multiple-time Cup Series champion with the assistance of Joe Gibbs Racing, which played a significant part in his achieving that feat. Gibbs, on the other hand, dug deeper into the matter once it became public knowledge that Mars would be leaving NASCAR, which would leave the number 18 car with a significant sponsorship void. When it became clear that Mars was about to depart, we devoted more than a year of our time preparing for this change. We simply could not seem to get things to work out for us in a way that would allow us to kind of solve the problems that we had with moving forward. We put forth a lot of effort into it. This was a lot of work that went into it, but unfortunately, it was simply one of those things in athletics when you come to a conclusion that, okay, we couldn't get that done, despite the fact that we put every effort into it and worked incredibly hard at it. This is what we have hoped for. To tell you the truth, and in all seriousness moving ahead, we gave it our best go. I'd say that we are sending Kyle Busch our most positive thoughts and best wishes. I believe he has found a wonderful new home and that Richard Childress will be an excellent companion for him. And as we both know, I'm not looking forward to competing against him at all. That much I can guarantee you. We have no doubt that he will achieve a great deal in that region. Joe Gibbs discusses Kyle Busch's sponsorship issue as well as other topics. It appears that Gibbs intended to make it work, but the sponsorship issue was too difficult for him to overcome. On the other hand, one may make the case that a 1-year agreement would have been reached if both parties had a genuine interest in maintaining their connection. All that is required is for one side to put their foot down and admit that things are not going to work out as planned. If Joe Gibbs Racing was on that side, then they are entirely to blame for one of the most poorly managed silly season circumstances in recent memory. However, Busch might have been the one to back out of a contract for just 1 year. Thus, the blame cannot be placed solely on the business. Perhaps one of the sides was acting unfairly, but this is something that will probably remain a secret for the foreseeable future. Gibbs continued to speak very highly of Busch and his prospects for the future, despite the fact that something had occurred that caused this cooperation to come to an end. All we can say is that we are grateful for the time we were able to spend together. This individual is going to compete as if he is one of the most formidable rivals in our sport. I have a lot of respect for both him and what is going to take place moving forward. It's just one of those things that can't happen in sports, and as much as you want it to have turned out differently, it didn't work out that way. Joe Gibbs discusses Kyle Busch's history and his plans for the future. The nature of talks can be difficult to grasp, but given the nature of the business of sports, this is to be expected. One day, everyone involved in NASCAR might finally be able to acquire a definitive answer to the question of what actually took place behind the scenes. In spite of this, Busch and Joe Gibbs Racing were expecting their story to have a different conclusion than this one. The terrible circumstances behind Joe Gibbs Racing's loss of Kyle Busch may be seen in NASCAR. After serving as the head of Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota for more than a decade, it's really upsetting to see Kyle Busch depart from both companies. As was mentioned earlier, this is not how the tale was supposed to come to a close. Busch was expected to retire with the organization that was formed around him as a multi-time champion before he called it quits. It was never intended for him to move to Richard Childress Racing, and the fact that he did so demonstrates an even more widespread issue within NASCAR. This is not how NASCAR's corporate operations should be conducted at all. There is no justification for a two-time Cup Series champion to depart an organization because of sponsorship when the organization has not breached the champion's contract. If the money was distributed in a more equitable manner, there would be less of a demand for sponsorship, and Kyle Busch would remain in the number 18 car for the upcoming season instead of Ty Gibbs, who is widely anticipated to take over the ride. Because of sponsorship, the race car drivers who have the most talent could not get the opportunity they deserve. It should not be a sport where drivers compete against one another for the largest checks, as this is very different from sports involving sticks and balls. Not only is this frustrating for the drivers, but it's also irritating for the fans of the sport, since it means that the top drivers do not get an opportunity that is well earned. The upcoming television contract with NASCAR needs to be equitable for all parties involved. Although it is inevitable that unreasonable demands would be made by either side, the fact that Busch left Joe Gibbs Racing is not due to a dispute between the two parties. When it comes to the sport as a whole, the flawed economic model is entirely to blame for how much sponsorship counts. The ideal scenario for NASCAR would be for teams to be able to hire the very finest drivers available without having to worry as much about securing sponsorship for their cars. Although motorsports are distinct from sports using sticks and balls, one would expect them to be considerably less difficult. If it can be accomplished in other sports, why can't it be accomplished in NASCAR? Why is it absolutely necessary for everything to be dependent on sponsorship? Since it's possible in other sports, the public seems to believe that financial reasons are to blame. If that does not turn out to be the case, then it would have been likely that Busch would have retired with Joe Gibbs Racing, and the story will end similarly to how it did with Tony Stewart, Jimmy Johnson, and Jeff Gordon. Instead, a highly successful collaboration is on the verge of ending, which is not the way things should be at all. That's all for today's video. Hey, if you want to see more videos like this one, then please hit the like button and make sure you share our video with all your friends and family and fellow racing fans who are in your inner circle. Another great idea would be for you to please subscribe to our channel. Make sure you press that bell icon and you will always be notified of the latest uploads and NASCAR content we have on our channel. We appreciate you spending time out of your busy day with us today, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again next time. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for watching.